I need to take a really quick break from this podcast. And if you are a loyal listener of the Fearless Investor podcast, you're probably either a business owner or looking to start a business. And for that reason, you need to make sure you're doing things correctly, down to the T. From forming the correct LLC to bookkeeping to understanding the tax code and more. It's all really the boring stuff, but it can make or break your business. In fact, if you aren't doing it correctly, you could be like 98% of other business professionals in the US and overpay on taxes. Don't do that, guys. Be the 2%. And that's why I rely on Easier Accounting, and so should you. Easier Accounting is a team of tax professionals that will set up your LLC, keep your books, file your taxes, and they can even repair your credit. And just so you know, I myself use Easier Accounting, and this came after using a similar company that, really being blunt here, completely ripped me off. So when I started using Easier Accounting, I came in a little bit skeptical, but as I started talking to them, I could really tell they had my best interests at heart. And you know me, if I'm not a professional, I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to outsource that stuff. And I hope you will do the same and use that same mindset to hire professionals to help you form and manage your business. Easier Accounting is absolutely the way to go. Go check them out at fearlesskyle.com/easier accounting. Hey guys, another episode with Richie Khandelwal. We're talking PriceLabs, and today's a big one. Richie's giddy today. He's excited. He's ready to talk about this new release with PriceLabs, but sounds like he's got something fun in store for us. So really quick before we do that, Richie, as always, guys, fearlesskyle.com/PriceLabs for all the episodes that we do with Richie. And by the way, just as a thank you to all of you that have been loyally listening to the entire show, to all these episodes we do with Richie, I went ahead and I made a free course for you at that same link, fearlesskyle.com/PriceLabs. It's 5 steps, 5 simple steps to setting up your PriceLabs and getting it rocking and rolling. So you can download that while also listening to our conversations with Richie. So Richie, what's up, man? What do you got for us today?
Thank you so much for having me again, Kyle. I'm very, very excited about what we have recently released. But before that, I want to play The Price is Right. I'm sure you're familiar with the game, right?
I love the game. The Bob Barker days.
Exactly. There's a little bit of a twist though when we
Okay.
talk about dynamic pricing, right? We don't play the prices, right? We play the occupancies, right?
Oh, okay.
Because depending on what's happening in terms of occupancy in the market, price is more an information signal depending on how the supply and demand is shaping up, right?
Okay.
Does it make sense?
So
Yep.
am I the contestant?
You're the contestant.
You
Yeah.
have okay. I mean, I've never been called down to the booth to actually be a contestant. So you got to like
Let's
tell
do
me,
it.
come on down.
Yeah. Come on down, Kyle. Let's
All
do
right,
this.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Alrighty. It's a simple premise I have for you, right?
Okay.
There are 100 vacation homes in Miami that are South Beach area, 4+ bedroom homes, right?
Okay.
Um, that's South Beach area. I'm not sure how familiar you're with it, but it might make sense, right?
Okay.
Here's a question for you. Can you guess what would be the occupancy on NYE 2023?
For these 100+ homes that are 4 bedrooms,
Yeah. So like how many homes will get booked, right?
I'm gonna
50,
guess.
40, 100,
I'm gonna
20,
guess 98%.
98%? Are you
Yeah.
sure?
That is my final
You
answer.
want to lock it in? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going with 98%. Let me reveal a little bit of information. Last year,
Wow, that's it.
2022, 67% homes were booked in that market,
Wow. Okay.
right? So because we have 100 homes, so 67 homes were booked in the market, right? What do you think? What is your answer now for 2023?
23. It's
Remember,
probably gonna
2022
be.
was maybe a better year, maybe not.
I
You
think it's
know,
gonna be probably around the same. I currently or is going to be.
going to be like the final occupancy.
Yeah, I think it'll be around the 65 to 70% again.
65, 70%. So we've moved from 98 to 65, 70%. How confident do you feel about that?
Well, I was really confident about 98% because I figure everyone's going to Miami for New Year's, but I guess I was wrong. So I'm probably totally wrong on this one too.
It might be because it's a 4-bedroom house, no?
Yeah,
So
maybe.
maybe because of that. Cool. Now I'm going to provide a little bit more information.
Okay.
Last year, at this time, although this is a slightly a snapshot from a couple of weeks ago, but at the time, the market was booked 18%. When I looked at the market, which was 18 properties were booked. When I looked for the same day for New Year's of 2023, the 33 properties were booked.
Almost
The
double.
final occupancy was 67 last year. What do you think will be this year now?
Yeah, I mean, 98%. Let's go.
You're back to 98%. That's what it is, right? But here's what we do, right?
Forecast is
We
okay.
This is what we forecast, right? We try to predict every single day what for a future date we expect the occupancy to look like, right?
Okay.
And that helps us come up with what your pricing would look like, right? So that's what
Wow.
we do at PriceLabs, right? Day in, day out. And you'd see a small little word there which says, let's take a quick look into how using HLP this daily evolves, right? There's something that we're going to cover, but what I want to pause here and talk about is that we looked at this occupancy evolution curve, right? All of us have no idea. The best guess that we can make is when we see last year's number and we say 67. Yes, it should be around 65 to 70, right? Like you rightly said. Then you see a next number evolve and you're like, hey, maybe my estimation of that would change, right? And this
Hmm.
is the constant and continuous estimation that PriceLabs continues to make, looking at not just past year data for that one day, but also trying to find what other days were similar in terms of booking patterns, right? What other days were like 18% and 33%, right? What other days went from, say, 18% today to 20% tomorrow to 25% the day after? What other days look like this so that I can come up with some sense of forecast, right? Because
Sure.
what I can't do is 18 to 33 was almost double, right? Like you rightly said
Right.
here. 18, so that does not mean last year 67, it can't be double of that because you can't go above
Yeah,
100.
not
You won't,
possible.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to come up with some estimates, and so that's kind of what we do. And with that, what I wanted to share, Kyle, next is I wanted to share this is what our big breakthrough release that we recently did with
Okay.
PriceLabs. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a screen here where you can see like a short video that we're not going to play right now. But if you come to PriceLabs website, you can see the 2023 breakthrough release, right? And what we did as a part of that, the biggest change, which I introduced in the slides, is HLP, also called as hyperlocal pulse algorithm. Now I know we'll do a individual video on the algorithm itself, right, and what changed. But
Hmm.
we introduced hyperlocal pulse algorithm, which is extremely hyperlocal, which looks at what's happening in the market extremely local to you on a few different factors, which we'll cover in the next video. Please do watch that, right? But we introduced that, and we've seen a significant increase in RevPAR for people using this algorithm, right?
Hey, Richie, just pause really quick. We actually were going to do HLP in this video too. So we are going to do the big release and HLP combined together.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So don't worry,
Uh,
I can edit that part out, but you can, yeah, you can assume we'll just go over both those here. So it might be a little bit longer, but that's okay. I think it's important for us to have both those in here.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic,
Cool.
cool. So as a part of this breakthrough release, we introduced hyperlocal pulse, which is the core central part of this release, right? But what we also did, Kyle, is we introduced quite a few new features, right? We introduced a whole new way of looking at performance metrics. If you remember, like I said, Kyle, we owe health metrics in parts to you because you pushed us to introduce health metrics. Now we have taken that health metrics and we have put it a little bit on steroids and introduced performance metrics that
Still
that
waiting for my
can help you cut
royalty. Still waiting for my royalties.
it out. But you can cut it 1,000 different ways now, right? We've also introduced customizations in PriceLabs have always been overwhelming, right? It's a fine
Hmm.
balance of saying uh, all the flexibility that you can get, but at the same time it can be overwhelming. And so we've introduced something called as smart presets, right? That if you check out again, we do future videos on this, but if you like smart presets and how to use that. Um, we've also introduced a desktop app, which
Very
makes
nice.
using PriceLabs very seamless, right? Desktop app, not mobile app yet, which is something that we're working on. But desktop app is something that we've introduced so that you can, you can easily access PriceLabs rather than logging into your browser, etc. Right? Team management, if you have a team, if you have VAs, etc., right, you can use team management feature in PriceLabs, that so that you can see who's editing what listing, what changes have they made, etc., right? And then on top of that, I'm going to scroll down here because we released about 20 different new features, right? As a part of
Very
this
nice.
release. So, which is why this is our breakthrough big release that we did,
Yeah.
right? It covers a ton of things. Kyle, you and I have probably have material for next 12 months to talk about in videos, right? But that is what I wanted to introduce, right? Start with that game because that game's very central to how do we come up with pricing, right, for any given day. And then also talk to you just briefly about this release. If you're curious, please do go check hello.pricelabs.co /breakthrough, right? And
Very
we'll
nice.
also, like, we can share the link. We'll share the link for this as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what I love about this, I went ahead and we use Price Labs on a daily basis. So for me, I'm going and checking out everything, and I do love all the new releases, and I do see a lot of the new things. Honestly, I love everything that you guys are doing with continuing to innovate and get better and make it more user friendly, which I think this update has done. And just like what you alluded to, we want to talk about some of those features in next month's video. But the one thing I really would like to focus in on is the HLP. I found that to be something really interesting as we were talking off camera about just, I think one of the biggest issues, if you want to say it, with any sort of dynamic pricing tool out there is when you have, North Miami Beach versus South Miami Beach, right? The prices can be drastically different, but it's hard to really know that from a dynamic pricing tool. I can't imagine how hard it is to formulate that, but it sounds like you guys have done something that's really zeroed in on, like, if you're in zip code 12345 and in this neighborhood, it might be different from the next neighborhood over. Is that pretty much what the
Absolutely. That's
HLP is?
exactly what it is, right? And so let me
Cool.
quickly show you HLP and Price Labs, right? If you can see my screen still. So
Yep.
we started in 2014. It's crazy to think about that we're almost a decade old business now,
It's
right?
great.
So almost, yeah, like next year we'd be a decade old, right? We started as a V1 at the time. Uh, Realized that we had very limited data, right? We were starting off as a business. Number two, technology was very different that was
Mhm.
available back in 2014, right? And then number three, what was happening in the world was very different, right? And so over the years, we kept updating that algorithm. We made changes. We did iterative changes, right? But in 2021, end of 2021, we were like the world of technology had completely shifted. We had a ton more data, and also the market dynamics were very very different in 2021 compared to 2014, right? What I mean by that is we'd gone through all of this, we'd gone through COVID, we'd gone through dramatic changes in inventory. A lot of how market was reacting was very very different, right? So we almost decided to break down what we had existing as an algorithm and create something absolutely new from scratch. If we were starting a new company in 2021, end of 2021 or 2022, what would we do, right? So that's the question that we asked ourselves, and we created
Okay.
something absolutely from scratch, which is HLP. Now I've said 2021, we're sitting in 2023, right? End of 2021, so it's almost 2 years, right? So what have we been doing for the last 2 years, right? We took everything. We took how we store data, how we collect data, how we clean data, how we process that data, how do we actually calculate your rates, everything from scratch so that it can be extremely hyper local. To answer your question, Kyle, to specifically answer the point that you were saying, how do you know that if I am in North Miami versus South Miami, or if I am a ski destination versus I am a lakefront destination, how do you truly impact my prices, right?
Yep.
Because my hyper local market can be very different than the rest of the city, right? If I
Hmm.
am right next to the stadium in a city versus my football stadium versus anywhere else, I'm going to have a differential pricing, right? And so that's exactly what we wanted to answer. And so it took us about 1.5 years to get that done. And then over the last 6 months or so, we've been testing with a lot of users, right? And we've had very very positive results to this, right? um, Specifically, like the game that we looked at, that's what hyperlocal pulse actually does. It looks at very nuanced information to saying what's happening in your market, what happened same time last year, what happened to similar dates last year, right? And based on that, it comes up with a forecasted occupancy and thus comes up with price, right? And in order to introduce transparency, you can also see all of this data in our neighborhood data charts now, right? So if you're in your PriceLabs account, if you're reviewing prices, next to your calendar, you'd see a neighborhood data tab, and you can see what the current market occupancy is for your hyperlocal market. What was it last year? What was it same time last year in terms of pacing, etc. That we looked at.
Okay.
Uh,
So really quick question, just for actually, you just brought up the forecasting, so I'm not even going to ask this question. I think you're going to probably answer it. Go for it.
so for example, like very simply, like if you see this graph, right? And I'm not sure if it's big enough on your screen, right? I'm hoping it is, right? But if focus on the graph below, right, where I see a black line, which is market occupancy, right, last year, and then I see a red line, which is market occupancy as of this year, right? Now, what you see is on certain dates, wherever I have the yellow arrows, right, there the market occupancy and the like the red line and the black line are very very close, same as last year, right? And wherever I have the green dots, I'm seeing the market is significantly ahead as of today compared to last year, right? That impacts how I think about my pacing, right? My pacing, which is, sorry, how I think about my forecast, right? So if you now go to the upper graph, and if you see there is a dotted line, which was last year final occupancy, and there's a green line, which is my forecasted occupancy, right? Now, what you can see is that forecasted occupancy, whenever my current pacing is higher, it is going to be higher but by some measure that PriceLabs calculates, right? It's going to be similar depending on if my pacing, like my mass last year same time versus this year is very similar. It's going to be like my last year's occupancy and green color is going to be very similar. You'd also see right towards the end there's a shift in like you see a yellow curve with a U kind of an arrow because
Hmm.
it's Easter, and we know that Easter week, although last year was booked very high, there is no pacing information. Easter week has to move a year ahead this year because the dates have changed, right? And so that's what we're trying to do with this curve right here, to figure out what's happening in the market relative to same time last year. What were the final occupancies? What were other dates that we can pick that are similar, and then come up with a forecast, right? Any
So
questions on that?
just for my clarification, right?
Yeah.
The forecasting is part of the new HLP. Before, it was just based on supply and demand currently, where this one is saying, hey, last year, here's where it was at. So we're going to forecast it. We're going to be a little bit more proactive. Is that the big difference here?
So two big differences here. One is we've gone extremely hyper local, right?
Right.
Previously, we would get like the seasonality from Chicago, right? And then we'd say just your demands from the hyperlocal market, right? But now we're also getting your seasonality from your hyperlocal market. We're also getting your day of week patterns from your hyperlocal market, right? Because of the structural change that we made in our algorithms, right? Number two, we're able to understand this elasticity a lot better now than we were able to in the prior algorithms, because prior algorithms we were not forecasting. We were forecasting, but the forecasting was not as hyperlocal, so it was not
Got it.
as accurate.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
So I also want to establish, so we've forecasted occupancy, and we started this video with the prices, right, but moved to occupancy, right? But all of at the
Yeah.
end of the day, all of us care about price, right? So we've
Right.
forecasted an occupancy, but what does that do, right? uh, with Along with that forecast, right, we also build a probability curve for every day for a price point, right? So what I mean by that is, as you can imagine, if I sell a house for $50, I
Hmm.
have a very high probability of booking, right? If I
Right.
sell the same house for $300, I have a very low probability of booking, right? And so we have to figure out where can we maximize our probability of booking times revenue, right? So which is where
Good.
you'd see a new graph which shows up here, right? So I have a probability of booking graph, that red line, right? And then I have the multiplier, which is probability of booking times my expected ADR on that day, right? That gives me where should I maximize my revenue, right? So now on the right hand side, this is going to get dense a little bit, right? And if you want to learn more, we have a few research papers that we've written on this, right? But
Cool.
on the right hand side, you can see ADRs, right? Where I have like a simple table: $100 ADR, $150 ADR, $250 ADR, and then I have a probability of booking. At 100, I'd get 90%. Like there's a 90% probability that I'll get booked. At 150, there's a 70% probability that I'd get booked. At 250, there's a 40% probability that I'd get booked, right?
Okay.
So on this date, like just looking at this data, if we had to pick, we would pick 150 because the expected revenue is a lot higher on that day. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Um,
Mm,
when we say expected revenue, we're just talking
yeah.
about that date, or we're talking about
That date.
that. Okay, that date. Got it.
That
So
date as of today,
okay, okay,
right?
makes sense.
So yeah, now that's where it gets further complicated, because now all of this like the best price that we had picked, say 150, we have to say we're pricing a date that's 540 days out. We have to understand how the demand will evolve. Would 150 still remain the best price that we pick? Maybe today we should pick 250, and then at certain date ahead we should pick 150, and then at certain
Right,
date ahead we should pick 100, right? And so
right.
that's the next level of intelligence, that dynamic programming that HLP brings in. Every date it looks at future forecast. It says, what is my final forecast going to be? How am I going to work back to saying what am I going to price today? Because I don't want to price, if I think maybe at 90 days out, I'm going to book at $100. I don't
Hmm.
want to price today at $100. I'm going to maybe
Right.
start pricing at 250, because there's a probability I can may get still booked, right?
Exactly.
Uh, I know I'll possibly very high likelihood I'll get booked 90 days out at $100, right? So we work back and we say, okay, what are we going to price today at, right? And so all of that included is what makes this hyperlocal pulse possible, right? And here's an example of how, like, these occupancy changes. With the occupancy changes every day, we change our price predictions, right?
Yep.
Very simple example from Taylor Swift conference, right? Not conference. So tired of conference season. But Taylor Swift music
Concert. Yeah.
concert, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so what you see is, like, this is a Phoenix, April 2014, right? Sorry, April 14th, 2023. And you see, like, we had a estimated forecasted occupancy, right? And then around August of 2022, for April of 2013, right, we said, market looks weak, the economic conditions are weak, we're going to start decreasing our occupancy forecast, right? We
Hmm.
started decreasing our occupancy forecast, right? But then in November of 2022, just before, like, we were at almost our lowest, and then in, I think, December sometime, Taylor Swift music concert was announced, and immediately our forecast predictions jumped up to
Sure.
saying this
Makes
date
sense.
has to now get booked a lot higher, right? Now the neighboring days may not still change, right? Because the neighboring days, it's still the economic impact and markets are
Right.
slower, etc., right? But because the impact of a Taylor Swift concert would be higher, our forecast would automatically change, and this won't be possible without this hyperlocal pulse algorithm that we've introduced.
So, just to get into the weeds of that,
Yeah.
do you have a team that's researching that Taylor Swift has announced this, or what is being triggered for this to know that now April 14th is going to be a really popular date?
So uh, two things that happen, right? If I go back to this chart, right? If I start seeing even minor deviations very far out,
Hmm.
right, and minor pickup very far out, right, I'm automatically going to increase rates. Like
Increase, right?
the algorithm will increase rates, right? Without
Right.
even talking to anyone, right? Because
Right.
it's like, wait, what happened? Like this date was not supposed to get booked, right?
Yep.
I was not supposed to see this occupancy. It is, I'm seeing this occupancy. There's something odd in the market. I need to
Yeah.
increase rates, right?
Yeah.
So
And
that's
in 2 days now, 120 days out, this one date is now increased 5% of occupancy in the entire market. That's odd. We're going to raise prices.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, right? Now that's our coverall. That's that's like the intelligence part of it, right? That's the
Right.
computer intelligence part of it. Trying to figure out patterns in the market. If we see sudden jumps in occupancies in the markets, right, that will change our forecast predictions, and that will impact our pricing predictions, right? The second thing that we do is we have a team that looks at as events get announced, right? We look at what do we expect the impact of those events to be, right? Now there's no good way for us to know that, right? Except we look at, again, historicals, right? So for example, we have some feedback from Taylor Swift's concert, right? We have feedback from some other concerts, right? So now when Beyonce's concerts come about, right, we're going to take that in and say we expect there's going to be some
Right.
increase, right? And so we're going to not change our forecast prediction because our forecast is purely algorithmically driven, right?
Yeah.
We're going to add some pricing barriers to saying up until 90 days before, let's not drop the price below
Mm-hmm.
this price point because we don't know what the actual impact of this event is today going to be,
Right.
right? So that's the number two team. And then we have a number three place where the things are like calendared that we just know every time they happen, right?
Yep.
Whether that's New Year's, right? So again, we forecast those, and we understand those really well from this forecast because we understand it, right? Or it's like Easter, we understand that it will happen every year, but it will shift by a couple of days here or there.
Right.
Or F1, we understand that it will happen every year. It'll shift by a couple of days or weekends here or there, right? But so there are three different processes that run. One, algorithmically, change in demand. Right? That chooses the
Yep.
occupancy, that chooses the price, right? Or reverse also, by the way, right? Number two, if events get announced that are popular enough, we pick those up, right? Whether that's user reported or we ourselves pick that up, and then we modify prices for those. And number three, we maintain a calendared list of events that happen every year, right?
Perfect.
And so, how do we
Okay.
adjust those?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's always been a question that people ask me is like, well, how do they know if I have a carnival going on in my town, right? Like, things like that are important for people to know. So thank you for clarifying.
And so,
Yeah, so
yeah,
yeah,
Carnival, it probably happens every year, right?
yep,
And so just on this chart that we are on, I am going to see your future occupancies to be really high,
right.
right? So I am already going to forecast that date to be higher, right?
Cool. So
Uh,
what's maybe one or two things about HLP to wrap this up and put a bow on it and show people just the final touches on it, because this is pretty cool. But I think the best thing, right, for people to go do right now is just like look at their market and see what the prices are looking like and how it's changed based on maybe some of their listings since you guys have gotten so hyper local.
Yeah. So number two, it's going to be more precise than our
Mhm.
previous algorithm and any other algorithm in the market, right? It is like because it really understands hyperlocally what's happening,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Number two, because of how we've built this up and the elasticity that it has, right? It is going to respond faster, right? So just like I said, the Taylor Swift concert gets announced a day later, your prices will be higher, right? It'll respond a lot faster to whatever's happening in the market. And it's not just Taylor Swift. If the market's softening, it's going to respond a lot faster to the
Right.
market, right?
Right.
Or if market's going strength to strength, 2024, I hope is a fantastic year for all of us. If it is, right, it'll respond to that a lot faster. It'll understand 2023 was slow year and 2024 would be a better year, right? So it'll respond to that. And as a result of that, we see higher revenues on average. Like this is for people who were not using a pricing algorithm and
Mhm.
have jumped onto hyperlocal pulse, right? We see an average increase of 26% year on year in terms of RevPAR,
Perfect. Okay.
right?
So, Richie, these are all really exciting announcements. Next month, we're going to be going over some actual features to show people, because like I think now everyone just needs to go try to test it out and check it out and see what these features are all about. But next month, we're going to actually dive into 3 or 4 of these features and show people here is how you can use this. Here's the way to be able to maximize this. So until then, those guys, go to fearlesskyle.com/PriceLabs to see all of the episodes that we have with Richie, to get your PriceLabs trial started, free for 30 days, plus an onboarding training. And again, I just started a brand new free course that you can download. It's only 30 minutes long, and it's 5 simple steps to how you can get your PriceLabs set up and really optimize from the get-go. So go check that out, all at fearlesskyle.com/PriceLabs. So Richie, thanks for once again being on, and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you so much. If I can add one more
Yeah.
thing, Kyle, sorry,
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
like if you were a new user as of July of
Okay.
2023, you're already on Hyperlocal Pulse.
Perfect.
If you're an older user, we've migrated some users and you would have received an email from us. If you've not received an email from us, you've not been migrated, reach out to our support team and they'll help you figure out how to migrate.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it, Richie.